Good morning, Eastside. I trust that you all had a wonderful time with your family over Christmas time. Hope that you've had a little bit of time to relax and rest and enjoy. We have a real treat for you this morning. We've reached back into our archive and we have a service that took place here at Eastside in March of 2018. We had a special guest. His name was Ted Cunningham, and Ted is the pastor of the Woodland Hills Church in Branson, Missouri. He's also an author. He's a comedian, and he is a relationship, particularly marriage expert. And so we're going to bring back this service, and I know that you're going to enjoy it. And so sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy this message with Pastor Ted Cunningham.
Well, I met my wife, Amy, on a blind date over 23 years ago. We'll be married 22 years this year. The night I met her, I looked at my buddy Austin. I said, I'm going to marry this woman. He said, you can't decide that. I said, I already did. I'll never forget walking into the kitchen of her 6'2", full-blooded Norwegian father, okay? He's pretty much a Viking. You got to see this guy. Very, very intimidating. And I said, I'd like permission to marry your daughter. And he responded in his thick Norwegian accent, "Jo betcha." I said, but only under one condition. I was 22, Amy was 21. I had just graduated. I wanted to break the rule and get married with her having another year of college left, right? And I said, I want to marry her between her junior and senior year, but only if you allow me to pay for her senior year of college. To which he said, "Jo betcha." And young guys will come up to me all the time at church services and events, and they'll be like, bro, how do you get married at 22 and 21 and afford to pay for a senior year of college? I said, it's simple. It's this thing called a job. And I had more than one. Can I get an amen? Yeah, and be like, I'll get young guys going, bro, I can't afford to get married young, to which I always respond the same. Bro, I would believe that if you weren't holding a venti caramel macchiato in your right hand and an iPhone 8 in your left. You need to start thinking Folgers and flip phones, bro. Because you haven't started marriage right until you get your parents' hand-me-down mattress. You know what I'm talking about, the dip already built in. You get in, you roll to the center. That's a good marriage right there. So if you are single in here and not looking and not interested in dating, or maybe you read a book years ago called I Kissed Dating Goodbye, it's time to say hello to dating. It's time to pursue relationships. You don't need to be afraid of marriage, and hopefully at the end of this morning and even into this evening, you'll be encouraged with a beautiful picture of marriage, and to believe that you can have this for yourself, and you don't have to wait till you're in your 30s or in your 40s. We had our daughter. She turns 15 this year, so over 15 years ago. This is Sugar. If you're familiar with Cunningham camps, Joe White, a good friend of ours, raised this deer. My daughter, she's our pioneer woman, outdoor girl. She likes not only knitting and crocheting, she likes raising the animals, harvesting the fur, spinning the yarn herself, passionate about this, and loves this little deer. My son, he loves deer too. He's passionate about deer. And I go to a lot of churches where pastors tell me, you can't show that picture. And I'm like, I think I'm safe in Independence, Missouri. I just got to be honest with you. Because this is half y'all's profile pictures on Facebook right here. And I'm excited that I'm only 5.8 miles from Bass Pro Shops, okay? So, but I grew up in a fishing family. I was born in Naperville, Illinois, outside of Chicago, and I did not grow up hunting. But a few years ago, Joe took Carson and I, taught Carson how to shoot. Carson drops this 11-point buck on his first time out hunting. And, I mean, we're in a stand by ourselves. Joe's a half mile away. He drops him, and we are down creekside. I mean, we're having a father-son moment like we've never had before. We're high-fiving, and Carson goes, Dad, what do we do? And I'm like, I have absolutely no idea. I said, but I think, according to the movie Red Dawn, you got to take a bite out of its heart. While I yell, Wolverines! I think that's how this whole thing goes. So, passionate about marriage and family. And today I want to give you 3 pillars that our church has been working with for the past 10 years. If you ever get down to Branson, Missouri, visit us on a Sunday, Woodland Hills Family Church. And if you come to Branson, I'm going to promise you one of these. This is my son Carson and I. This is last fall. He hooked this 7-pound rainbow all by himself. You ain't catching these in Kansas City, I got to be real honest with you. But you can get that in Branson. So this is my little Chamber of Commerce pitch I always do in every church I go to around the country. Passionate about Branson, but more passionate about marriage and family. And so 10 years ago, we started something called To Ignite, where we took the second Sunday of every month. No matter what series we were in, if we were teaching through a book of the Bible, verse by verse, or a topical series, we stopped the second Sunday of every month and we taught about marriage. And the big ideas behind that is what I call, they're the pillars of this ministry. And we did this for 7 years. And so for 7 years, our church received over 70 messages on marriage. And about halfway through To Ignite Sundays, I got passionate as I looked around and saw the young men in our church not pursuing women, not dating, not asking anyone out. And I became burdened by this because young men today are finding their adventure in video games and their romance in porn. And so as a pastor, I started getting passionate about it. I'm encouraging the young men in our church to ask out women. It's time to start dating. It's time to think about marriage. I went to Liberty University where Dr. Falwell almost every Wednesday spoke in chapel, and he would tell us, don't you dare leave this campus without a wife, guys. Pursue dating. Get married. And if you've been on a Christian campus, you know it's called Ring by Spring, right? So the whole thing, it was a passionate part of Liberty. Well, I started saying, why are we not doing this in the church? Why are we not? We celebrate marriage with weddings. We do that well, I believe, but we don't promote marriage. We got to get back to painting a beautiful picture of marriage. Man, I was fired up challenging the young guys to pursue marriage, and I started getting letters and emails, and you're like, shocker. I don't know, Pastor, if you get letters or emails of criticism, but I do. My favorite letter came from a senior lady in our church named Deb, and she said, hey, Ted, thanks for putting some fire back into the young men, but don't forget about us old women. She said, we'd like to go on a date from time to time, too. Why don't you start challenging the old men in the church to start asking out the old women? And I'm here to tell you, that'll grow a church in Branson, Missouri. I can tell you that. You start connecting old people. I don't know what website that would be, baldknobbers.com or I have no idea. But she gives me this letter telling me, Pastor, don't forget about us old people. Get us going on dates. Get us married. Us widows. And I'm like, hey, why ain't you doing it? She listed for me in this letter all of her assets. House on the lake, pension. The last line of her asset list was 2 Sea-Doos. I have 2 Sea-Doos. So I read it before our congregation in the first service, and at the end of it, I'm worked up, I'm passionate, you're probably figuring out, I'm worked up, and at the end I go, all right, let me ask you, Woodland Hills, where are the men for Deb? And 5 guys stood up. At the end of the service, 3 guys came forward, and the first 2 asked me, hey, Pastor, can you show us a picture, or can you point her out for us? And I said, I'd be happy to do that. Third guy walks up to me and goes, hey, Pastor, you got a picture of those Sea-Doos? And in our church, I don't care what your age is, we would call that, and we would call him a little boy. And little boys make bad husbands. And so let me share with you these 3 pillars as we begin painting a beautiful picture of marriage. So if you're young and single, and not in love, listen up. You got a 90% chance of walking down the aisle one day, according to research. If you're young and in love and planning on walking down the aisle soon, listen up. Mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, listen up. These 3 pillars are what we all need to be doing in the church, to be painting a beautiful picture of marriage, not just celebrating it with a wedding, but promoting it. And so that's the first big idea. The first big idea is honoring marriage. This would be the first pillar. Honor marriage. Hebrews 13:4 says, marriage should be honored by all. So, the idea behind honor is just esteeming as highly valuable. If I want to honor you as a person, I'm going to speak words of high value over you. We would also call that the blessing. I'm going to give you a blessing. By all means whether you're married or single, young or old, we're all called to esteem marriage as highly valuable. So marriage may not be for you right now. You may not be at that season in life, but as a follower of Jesus Christ, you are called to be for marriage. So marriage may not be for you, but you are called to be for marriage. And then the next part of the verse, and the marriage bed kept pure. Now, I grew up in an independent, fundamental, premillennial, King James Version only Baptist church, okay? I grew up in a church and a home that taught me how to love Jesus. But I want to show you off of this verse, because I heard this verse in youth group growing up all the time. It was the same outline every time they spoke on Hebrews 13:4. The outline was simple. Don't, wait, quit, stop it, don't touch that. That was the outline. Because I grew up in a church and a home that taught me how to honor purity, not marriage. And my passion is to get young people understanding that especially in youth groups and with our children's ministry, we need to be starting early teaching our young people to honor, esteem marriage as a good thing, not just purity. But we've got to understand marriage used to be the cornerstone. It used to be something we all esteemed as highly valuable, but the problem today is it's become the capstone. Young people are doing everything else in life and saying, marriage is something I'll do after I've done everything else. The 5 milestones of adulthood, they've been the same in every generation. It's 58 years of marriage, right? 58. These were your 5 milestones. They're my generation's 5 milestones. My son out here in the lobby, it's his 5 milestones, and here they are. Leave home, finish school or apprenticeship or on-the-job training, get a job. Okay, I'll repeat that for anybody living in their parents' basement with Star Wars bed sheets on their bed. Get a job, get married, start a family. Just say it again, because I know I throw those at you fast. Leave home, finish school or training, get a job, get married, start a family. Same 5 milestones of adulthood for all generations. The difference between your generation and my generation, your generation completed these 5 milestones in a very short period of time, if not in the same week. But it was like this. It was go, 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 fast, fast. You ain't got time, okay? But now what we've done is we've taken those 5 milestones and we've stretched them out on this track that we call prolonged adolescence. Prolonged adolescence is defined as too much privilege, not enough responsibility. And we don't talk about prolonged adolescence enough, but it is a leading cause of divorce in our country today. People refusing to grow up. And what we say is you got to get your degree or degrees, you got to get a job, you got to not only make money, you need to save some money, you need to get your first place, you need to get established before you'll ever be successful at marriage. We have a term we put on it, independence. Learn to become independent. But I submit to you that independence is a socially acceptable term for selfishness. We're sending our children out of the home and saying, go live by yourself and for yourself for another 10, 15, 20 years. And after you do all that, put the capstone of marriage on it. But I think there's another way. And that way is in this room right now. It's represented in that first group that stood. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you a few scenarios, and I want you to raise your hand if this describes you. Not on all of them, but on this first one. You say, we were mature when we got married. Would you raise your hand? Okay, look around the room. We have another term for them. They're called farmers. Why? Well, because farmers, and there are other occupations where they just didn't have a choice. They were up by the time they were 3, 4, 5 years old. They were working. They were handed massive amounts of responsibility and very little privilege. So when they left their homes, they were ready for the responsibility of work and relationships. But let me ask this next one. You say, we were immature when we got married, but grew up together. Amy and I would raise our hands on that one. And young people, please look around and hear that. You can get married and grow up together. You don't have to wait to accomplish everything else. When I meet couples that have been dating for 7 years, my heart aches for them because they're waiting for the spreadsheet to all balance out. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if your spreadsheet is currently balancing, because there'd be a lot of married couples going, it ain't balancing right now. Let me ask this next one. You would say, we were immature when we married. I grew up, my spouse did not. Don't raise your hand on that one right there. Don't raise your hand. How about the fourth one? We were immature when we married. My spouse grew up, I did not. How many would raise your hand on that? That's a huge step of maturity right there. How about this last one? We were immature when we married and still are. I love the honesty of my millennial friends, yeah. We're working on it, though. Painting a beautiful picture of marriage tells young people, you got this. You can do this. You don't have to be afraid of this. We can pursue marriage. It's a good thing. We can honor marriage, esteem it as highly valuable, and tell young people. And by the way, when I'm encouraging people to get married, and when I'm challenging people to avoid the unnecessary delay of marriage, I'm not encouraging people to rush marriage. I get that criticism a lot. I wrote a book called Young and in Love, Challenging the Unnecessary Delay of Marriage. And people, the comments and critique on that book, oh, he's just pushing people to get married. Not pushing people to get married, we're just promoting it. We're saying it's a good thing. There's another message, though, that has found its way into the hearts of many young people, and they've just watched this. This message has found its way into the church. It's a message I'm trying with every breath I have in me to come against. And the message goes something like this: God gave you your spouse to beat you down and to suck the life out of you so you can be more like Jesus. I want you to let that sink in for just a second. Because a good friend of mine, Gary Thomas, wrote a great book. I want to encourage you to get this book, read it at some point. It's called Sacred Marriage. And in that book, he asked the question, what if God gave you your spouse to make you holy more than happy? Some people never even read the book, but they took that subtitle, which was a question and is still a question, and they changed it from a question to a statement. They changed some words around, and now you will hear leaders say this: God gave you your spouse to make you holy, not happy. And I'm here to tell you, not true. A few years ago, Gary and I were invited to the same conference, and they said, we're going to do a debate on happiness versus holiness. Ted, we want you to argue for happiness. And I said, so long as you don't introduce me after Gary speaks for holiness and now to argue against holiness, I'm for holiness. Okay, but I think we've got to get back to this second pillar of teaching people how to enjoy marriage. The decision to enjoy marriage. Painting a beautiful picture of marriage means that we encourage young people with enjoying life together, husband and wife. If you haven't done your quiet time in Ecclesiastes lately, I encourage you to go there. It's a great winter read. It's dark, it's pessimistic. It will very much pick up your spirits on a cold, snowy day in Missouri. But I love Ecclesiastes. It's 12 chapters, and here are the bookends. Chapter 1, life is hard. Chapter 12, then you die. These are the bookends. Chapter 1, generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. And Solomon begins painting a picture of the earth as a grinder. You and I are born into this grinder. It's a theme throughout all of Scripture, and we're only here for a short time, and then we're gone. And the grind keeps going. We don't stop the grind. We're just born into it. Psalm 90 and verse 10 says, 70 years you have upon this earth, 80 if you're strong. Those years, though, are filled with sorrow and anguish, meaning life is challenging. And that's chapter 12 of Ecclesiastes. Eventually, your body finds its way into the grind, and your body begins breaking down. As my mentor and co-author said for years, and an elder at our church, when he hit his 70s, he said, staying alive is a part-time job for me. Because he would say, I'm in Ecclesiastes 12 right now. You get up in the morning, Ted, and hop out of bed and take your health for granted. He says, I jump up out of bed when I can, and I have to think about the rest of my day, and I have to plan my day out health-wise. Because why? Chapter 12. His body found its way into the grind. But in the middle of life is hard, and then you die. We get Ecclesiastes 9, 7 through 9, that says this: go, eat your food with gladness, and drink your sparkling cider with a joyful heart. I always clean that up for the Baptist churches. I just need you to know that. For it is now that God favors what you do. Boy, you know what we got to get back to in our culture and in our country and in our homes is families gathered around a table with no technology and no distractions, leaning in, listening to one another, eyeball to eyeball, body language to body, and just enjoying time around a table. That's all it's saying. God favors. This is what I love in Acts chapter 2. When you read the story of the first century church, of the start of the church, it says they ate together with glad and sincere hearts. There's gladness around a table when we enjoy one another around good food and Welch's. Verse 8. Always be clothed in white and always anoint your head with oil, adding to enjoying life joy and festivity. We should be enjoying life, and especially follower of Jesus. Those who fear the Lord and keep his commandments should be the most joyful people on the planet. And then verse 9 reads, endure life with your wife. And I love, it's on the screen, so it doesn't get to be a punchline. But when I go to churches and it's not on the screen and there are no open Bibles, and I misquote that, endure life with your wife, I always get a few, That's good. That's good. And I get the pounce. That's not what it says. It doesn't say endure life with your wife all your miserable days. It says, verse 9, very important theology for marriage that we often leave out when we talk about marriage. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun. Under the sun is the theme throughout all of Ecclesiastes, just life upon this earth under the sun. All your meaningless days. Now watch this. Enjoying life, for this is your lot in life and in your toilsome labor under the sun. Toilsome there means grueling. The word there is grueling. Grueling labor. Providing for a family can be challenging, difficult, and painful, and all God's people said. But your marriage isn't meant to be. Think about this. God didn't give you your spouse to be the grind. He gave you your spouse to go through the grind with. And if right now your spouse is not your teammate and your spouse is your opponent on basically every issue that comes into the home, you've turned your spouse into the grind. And God didn't give you your spouse to be the grind. When I meet a young man who tells me, man, I had big dreams, plans, and goals for the future, but then I got married. Like, yeah, you're missing it. God didn't give you your spouse to destroy your life. He gave you your spouse, and you must choose. This is an imperative here. You must choose to enjoy life with your wife. Tell guys in our church all the time, stop looking for greener grass. Where there's greener grass, there is a septic leak. Stay home and water your own lawn. And all God's people said, amen. For a good time, call home. But today, what are the buzzwords today? Compatibility and chemistry. Got to have compatibility. And so we think compatibility and enjoying life with your wife means you got to take a test. You got to have an algorithm set you up. And I just spoke at Liberty a couple of weeks ago on Valentine's Day, and I was able to tell the entire student body, I don't care how you meet, right? It's what you do after you meet that matters. I don't care how you meet, eharmony.com, match.com, farmersonly.com, ancestry.com. I don't care how you meet. I'm sorry, I should have left the Arkansas jokes back in Branson. It doesn't matter how you meet. It's what you do after you meet. Pursue traditional relationship formation milestones. And by the way, enjoying life with your wife, whom you love, that is a decision. And 58 years of marriage, guess what? They went through the same toilsome labor that I did. Right? Did you have kids? Yeah. Did you have to feed them? Did you have to clothe them? And that costs money. Did you work for that money, or are you a trust fund baby? No, you worked for it. That's my point. If we were to go around this room right now, I'm here to tell you, we all have the toilsome labor. Challenging. The difference is I've made the decision in my marriage to enjoy life with my wife. We're going to go through this toilsome labor together, enjoying one another. Not going at one another. It's a decision you have to make. I'm married to a strong woman. Raise your hand if you're married to a strong woman. Good answer. Good answer. Raise your hand if you love being married to a strong woman. I do. Good. Even better answer right there, my friend. Of course I do. Yes, I do, honey. And I'm looking around the room, and the ladies are going, raise your hand. A strong woman, and you love it. I'm married to a man. She's a strong woman. We'll be driving down the road, just having the most pleasant conversation. Something will be said and done. Right there. Woo! All right, here we are. Rodeo time. Let's go. And some of you don't enjoy that. I love it. I do, because my wife's great at making decisions. She is a decision maker, but she's passionate. I don't call her a strong woman. She's a passionate woman. And I mean, she just, everything. And I'm a little bit more, and I feel passionate at times. I'm passionate right now, but off of preaching. I'm maybe a little bit more laid back. But I can come home from a bad day at church or just had a bad last meeting, and Amy's like, hey, babe, how was your day? Like, it was kind of a rough day. And she looks at me and she goes, fine, let's quit, move to Africa, be missionaries full time. Wow. I think we should bring it down a notch. I think we should sleep on it. Get up in the morning before we sell everything we own and move to Africa. I think we should really think that through before we go hopping continents. Anybody else agree with me on it? But she's just passionate. We'll go for walks. And I'm like, let's just do a leisure stroll through the neighborhood. Oh, no, we got to get in our steps and get our clock going, right? And we're, woo! And everything is like, man, and we'll be walking. And she'll go, God, come on, keep up. Where you at? Where you at? And she'll ask me on a walk. This is true. She'll ask me on a walk, are you squeezing your cheeks together? Amy. My buttocks is not in this conversation right now, but that's who she is, a passionate woman. I don't know if you know that show, Fixer Upper with Chip and Joanna Gaines. Yeah, if I ever meet Chip Gaines, I'm going to punch him right in the face. I hate that man and everything he stands for. He is ruining our marriage. I'll come home from work, and Amy will be standing in the family room. I'll be like, hey, babe, what's going on? And she'll go, how about after dinner, we move that wall right there. And I don't know, but I hate fixing things up. Raise your hand if you hate fixing things up. And Chip Gaines does it on this show, and he does little dances, telling jokes and having fun. Not me. I'm not into it. So I went online. I found a term that saved our marriage, literally. And the term is load bearing. Every wall in our home is load bearing. And I speak this over every house in here. Every home in here has load bearing walls. You can't touch them. But that's my wife. She's just passionate. And I love this. And I didn't realize early into marriage, and I don't know this couple well, but I'm assuming she asks you questions, and there are times she asks you questions, you're like, why does she think I know the answer to that question? Like, we'll watch movies, and there'll be engineers doing something, or chemists, and like, hey, what are they doing? I failed biology. I have no idea and I'm watching the same movie in real time as you are. But I'm like, I never understood this. We would drive through construction zones, and Amy'd be like, hey, babe, yeah, what are they doing right here? Let's see. Right. Hey, babe, yeah, I wasn't involved in any of the meetings on this project, right? I have no idea. But can I just tell you what I didn't understand early in marriage is she's not asking me questions for information. She wants connection. We drive down the road. It drives her crazy that we sit there for 15 minutes thinking about nothing. And the longer we think about nothing, the more we smile, right? We're happy, and she'll be like, what are you thinking about right now? And the answer, thinking about nothing, drives her crazy. And so I have to look at the sticker in the upper left-hand corner. We need an oil change in 300 miles. She wants connection, not information. And I didn't know that early on. But part of choosing, this is what I love about my wife. She made the decision. We're not going to let everything frustrating, irritating, pet peeves coming into our marriage. We're going to choose to have fun, because staying married for 58 years is a choice that flows from your character, not compatibility. Compatibility flows from decisions you make on character. I'm making the decision to stay married, and the decision to enjoy life with your wife flows from the exact same place. We made the decision to remove the divorce word from our marriage. We're also making the decision to take everything irritating, frustrating, and annoying and enjoying it together. Man, do I love that. I absolutely love that. And Amy, she's strong with it. And so I've been studying comedy for about the last 2 years, and one of the things I love about comedy is it's simple, but it's a method like anything else and a strategy, but you have to premise, punchline, premise, punchline, premise, punchline. And And a callback is you take the punchline from earlier in the set and you bring it back up 15 or 20 minutes later off of a different premise, and it gets even a bigger laugh. When I first studied that, I thought, why aren't we doing this in marriage? Why are we allowing these scripts and this conflict just to keep going, keep going, keep going? What if we turned every conflict into a callback? And one of our callbacks, and one of the ways I enjoy life with my wife, is now every single time we drive through a construction zone, Amy will go, hey, babe, what are they doing right here? I don't get frustrated. I turn into the construction foreman. I told him, rip it up, boys! We're going 12 lanes, not 6. I'll roll down the window. I'll talk to guys as we drive by. John, we talked about that. You want a great marriage? Just start making stuff up. That's how you have a great marriage. She wants connection, not information. I've been sharing this around the country. One of my favorite callback stories came from a new friend. I said, you got to let me use that because he's with me, hates fixing things, gets tired of coming home, and, all right, it's broke. What do you want me to do? Fix it. Right? Oh, he goes, oh, I hate it because I'm just not a handy person. He goes, I got to work one day, and my wife calls, yeah, you forgot to fix the toilets running in the master bath. Oh, honey, go take the lid off. Look, you'll see the chains wrapped around the ball, and she does. And she goes, yep, sure enough, that's what's happening. He goes, reach in there, and she goes, ew. Disgusting. I'm not reaching in there. And he goes, honey, it's tap water. It's like the water that comes out of the sink. It's completely clean. There's nothing ever dirty been in there. Convinces her to reach in. And right before she reaches in, she goes, oh, am I going to get electrocuted? That's not even the punchline. Wait for the punchline here. He came up with the best callback I've ever heard. I've even stolen it. I use it myself around our house. He goes, honey, you got to unplug the toilet first. So now he says, when I'm walking out the door and something needs to be fixed, he goes, all I have to do for the laugh and for both of us to have just a quick, fun, enjoyable moment together is yell back in the house, just unplug it. And he walks out the door. It's a decision that you make. Enjoying life in marriage, please hear me. Enjoying life in marriage is a decision, not an outcome. We live in a culture that says, when I'm in the right season, just, wait till we have kids. Have you ever noticed when you have kids that everybody leading up to having your first child is like, oh, you're going to love children. You should have children. You should have a bunch of children. It's going to be the greatest thing you've ever had. Then you announce you're getting, having your first child, and you hear, oh, your life's never going to be the same. From the same people. And then you're like, if we can just get these kids out of diapers, we'll have a better marriage. If we can just get these kids off to school, right? If we can just get these kids out of school, if we can just get these kids out of the house and set up in their own homes. And we're always pushing off enjoying life together. It's now in whatever season you're in. You have to choose it. You have to make the decision. Those of you who raise your hand, I'm married to a strong woman, or if you're married to a strong spouse, let that spouse lead out and say, you pick it, and we're going to have fun. We're going to enjoy life together. One more thing, one more pillar in this, prioritizing marriage. Actually, go back. I want to share this. This is my plug kind of for tonight. If right now your marriage is stuck in the toilsome labor, you've turned your marriage into toilsome labor, and you've turned your spouse into your opponent rather than your teammate, that's where we're kicking it off tonight at 5. We're going to be talking about from anger to intimacy, but we're going to be talking about communication, how to get to the heart of your spouse, how to help your spouse win every argument. Okay, and that's going to be from 5 to 7 tonight. Now, we'll go to the last pillar here, prioritize marriage. This verse, Genesis 2:24, we often quote just as a marriage verse, but we lose the great nugget and parenting teaching that is in this passage. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother. In other words, going back to those milestones and what we talked about a moment ago with honoring marriage, my job as a parent is to make sure my children leave home as adults, not on a journey to become one. It's not the job of college to turn my children into adults. It's not the job of their first employer. And it's not the job of their spouse. That's the job of mom and dad. We're supposed to be raising children who, it doesn't say for this reason a child leaves his mom and dad. It doesn't say for this reason an adolescent leaves his mom and dad. For this reason, the verse that Jesus quotes and that Paul quotes, central marriage teaching in the Bible, begins with this reason: a man, someone who's prepared for the responsibility of work and marriage, leaves the home. You can ask my son Carson, what's your dad's definition of maturity according to Genesis 2:24? And Carson will go, I will not be with mom and dad forever, so plan accordingly. That's right. Painting a beautiful picture of marriage and preparing your children to leave home begins with you prioritizing your marriage over them. This passage is teaching that the bond between a husband and a wife is to be stronger than the bond between a parent and a child. Your children are supposed to leave. And a great gift to your children, a great gift for their future marriage, a great gift for them being set up for success in life is not all the attributes and accomplishments, academics, activities, and athletics. It's a mom and dad who love and enjoy one another. Don't overlook your marriage as one of your best parenting tools. You're like, well, we have a blended family. This is just as true for blended families. Prioritize your marriage in the home. Eradicate the kid-centered home. Go home now or on the way home today from church, look at your kids and say, I love you. You are a welcomed addition to this home, but you will no longer be the center of it. And your teenagers will be like, I don't know what this heretic was talking about at church today, but I'd like to revisit his final point. We tell our kids that all the time. We love you. Think about it. We do. You're a welcomed addition to this home, and they are, but you are not the center of it. If you want to add one to it, I always add this one. We love you. You're a welcomed addition to this home. You're not the center of it. And your mom and I, we got big plans after you leave. And they'll be like, well, what are you going to do? Well, first of all, we're going to Disney World. That's where we're kicking this whole thing off. Enjoying life together. Man, my son and I, we love watching YouTube clips. And I want to ask you this question. Do you have a marriage worth repeating? Do you have a marriage? Because your children see everything you do. They hear everything you say. They remember everything, forget nothing, and then they repeat. Do you have a marriage worth repeating? My son's favorite YouTube clip is the German Coast Guard. If you get time today, go type into YouTube German Coast Guard, 30-second clip. It's real fast, and he falls over in laughter when he sees this clip, especially for the first time. Guys being trained day one on the German Coast Guard when a mayday comes in. Mayday, mayday, we are sinking, we are sinking. Hello? This is the German Coast Guard. Mayday, mayday, we are sinking, we are sinking. What are you sinking about? My son falls over in laughter. A few weeks later, we're driving down the road, and I start singing a hymn from my childhood that goes like this. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore. And from the back seat I heard, and what were you sinking about? And I looked at my wife, and I said, they see everything, they hear everything, they forget nothing, and then they repeat. And I want a marriage worth repeating. I want my children to leave home as adults, ready for their own marriage. Carson to be united to his wife, and the two become one flesh. When my daughter was 5, she was kind of taking over the home. This is when I first started learning about the kid-centered home. I was like, whoa, what is going on? I remember setting her down on the breakfast bar. I put my hand on her heart, and I said, Corinne May Cunningham, there's only one queen in this house, and you ain't her. She looked at me with those eyes that said, we'll see. Next day, she tells my wife, there's room enough in this house for 2 queens. I put her back on the breakfast bar. I put my hand on her heart, and I said, Corinne May, you'll never be my queen, but you're my princess. And what that means is one day I'm going to stand at the back of a church with you, looking down the aisle. And I'm not walking you down that aisle until I know he loves you as much as me. Because it's at that moment and that day where we see Genesis 2:24 come to life and we see the image of it. I said, I'm going to walk you down an aisle and give you a way to become another man's queen. I said, you'll never be my queen, but you're going to be another man's queen. I said, Corinne, I'm going to blow it in a lot of areas as your dad. But I said, here's one. I'm telling her this at 5. She's going to be 15 this year. I said, Corinne, a big part of my parenting strategy is between now, age 5, and that day when I walk you down the aisle, I want to show you to the best of my ability every day how a queen should be treated. I want you to see it. I want you to know what it looks like. Because I don't know if you got a 5-year-old girl, but Mom and I, Amy and I would be talking, and Corinne would just walk into the room. And what do? Well, we want to stop. Don't stop. Don't stop that conversation, husband and wife. Keep it going. Right there, you're teaching. You know why that's important? Because I don't want her one day walking into a boardroom going, you'll get fired. You understand, this eradicating the kid-centered home and prioritizing your marriage is a gift to your children. It's eradicating. I don't talk a lot about prolonged adolescence. I talk about the source of it. And the source of prolonged adolescence is the kid-centered home. We raise our children in homes and we center the home around that kid for 20 years. And then we send them out of the home and we say, hey, you know what a good strategy for your marriage is? Go live for yourself and by yourself for another 10 years. And when you're done with that, get married. Because 2 independent people coming together makes for a great marriage. No. The better way is leaving as mom and dad. And I will tell you, for almost biblically, traditionally, all the way up to about the past 60, 70 years, this took place like in a day. You left your parents' home and went into your new home. Well, now there's a gap between this. You leave mom and dad's home and you spend that 10 years. But I'm telling you, mom and dad, begin early. Look at your kids. We love you. You're a welcomed addition to this home, but you're not the center of it. Anybody here got toddlers right now? Let me see the hand. I've been watching. You've been fun to watch. Toddlers, how old are your kids? She's 3? Oh, do you know this couple married 58 years? You do? Okay. Would you do me a favor, and if you're okay with this, would you make it your mission when you leave today, come down here and meet this couple? You need to get to know them. You know why? Because you got antibacterial product hanging all over your purse. She used to let her kids pick up cigarette butts and chew on them. And her kids are fine. And you need to talk to him because he used to let his kids sleep in the back window of the car on long trips. You now strap them in like you're launching them to outer space, right? Here we go. Oh, this won't be bad. 12 hours? I can do this for 12 hours. They used to put 3 kids in one playpen with only one toy. That's where we got the idea for cage fighting. And when the kids messed up, they took all 3 kids out of the playpen, they turned the playpen upside down and put it on top of them, and their kids are fine. Those were good days. How many of you remember drinking out of garden hoses? Raise your hand. Oh, look, and we're fine. Raise your hand if you've ever been shot by a BB gun. Oh, I'm in Independence now. Listen. You want to lower the crime rate in this country, you let your daughter start shooting little neighbor kids with their BB gun now. How many of you remember shooting your brother with a BB gun, no protective eyewear, your parents standing in the kitchen just watching? Those were good days. And then Dad would come out and help you build a ramp to jump your bike over the ditch. And when you fell and when you crashed, he didn't come running. He would just yell, way to go, son, that was a good one. Get up, shake it off, rub some dirt on it. And if the dirt didn't work, you took Pepto-Bismol. Anybody notice that? Whatever. Pepto solved everything. Mom would always come running out with the cup. Anyway. How many of you remember when your dad couldn't figure out which of your siblings was at fault, so he just spanked all of you? Anybody remember? Those were good days. How many of you remember when your dad sent you upstairs to wait for your spanking? That was worse than the spanking. How many of you remember when your dad sent you upstairs to wait for your spanking and then forgot he sent you upstairs to wait for your spanking? And you're now in this moral dilemma. Do I go tell my dad, I'm ready for my spanking? As soon as you started thinking that, you heard him coming up the stairs. You heard the belt hitting every loop. My brother, 4 years older than me, he is stubborn. He'd sit on his side of the bed. Oh, Dad ain't going to break me. I'm like, are you kidding? I'm screaming on the backswing. How many of you remember when your mom spanked you with whatever she had handy? Anybody remember that? Oh, those were good days. How many of you have been spanked by a blow dryer? Raise your hand. Oh, I've been spanked by a blow dryer. Kitchen utensil? Yeah. How many of you remember when your mom gave permission to spank you to total strangers? Does anybody remember that? He gets out of line. Boy, I had good parents. My parents, I remember they used to tell me that the bell on the ice cream truck meant they were out of ice cream. Those are good parents right there. Those are good parents. Man. You remember when we used to be able to play sports without committing ourselves to tournaments in Beijing? We're getting out of hands with the sports, people. I got to be honest with you. It's getting out of hand. I walk up in my son's karate class, and the master comes out all excited. Well, I got good news. I'm like, what's that? He goes, we're going to the World Championships in Italy. I'm like, I don't think so. That ain't happening. He said, why not? I go, I've never been to Italy. And the first time I go to Italy will be with my wife, not my son's dojo karate kid. That ain't happening. So let me ask you, and I want you to give it to me. Give it to me loud in William Wallace fashion. When it comes to honoring your marriage, keeping the marriage bed pure, enjoying your marriage, prioritizing your marriage, eradicating the kid-centered home, which will eradicate prolonged adolescence, will you run or will you fight? And she's going, we will run. Let's wait till she gets in kindergarten. No, you will fight. So give it to me with everything you got. Will you run or will you fight?